Amen. This is an historic day in which will be the first time that my son and I, Joshua, have done a tag team sermon. Amen. We were preparing this message. We had everything except the introduction. Little did I know that I was going to be the introduction. You see, because on the way to church this morning, I got a phone call from my brother, and he informed me that my father just passed. And so little did I know that I was going to be the introduction to a sermon, and with the sermon's title, God is in Control
when life seems out of control.
Somebody repeat after me. God is in control.
God is in control.
When life seems out of control.
When life seems out of control.
There's certain things in life that happens. Certain things in life that happens that you just can't deal with any other kind of way. There's some things that occur in our lives that kind of stretch us and strain us and rip us apart. There's some things that no matter what amount of education you have, no matter how much money you have, no matter how many friends you have, there are just some things that take you there. This is one of those things. And in this text itself, there are not one death, not two deaths, but three deaths in this very text. Didn't know that I would be zoomed in to be a part of it. And so we walk through this text together as we look to see what God has to say to each of us. We're looking at Ruth, the first chapter, and we will read, starting with verse 1.
In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. So a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab.
And the man's name was Elimelech. His wife's name was Naomi. And the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. And they were Ephrathites from Bethlehem, Judah. And they went to Moab and lived there.
Now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died when she was left with her 2 sons.
And they married Moabite women. One was named Orpah, get that right, not Oprah. It was Orpah, and the other was Ruth. And after they had lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died. And Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband. I want to share with you the words, even in this text, stand out, and they have a meaning. And what we want to gather from the words of these words that are mentioned here is that your words define your destiny.
Yes, sir.
Somebody say, your words define your destiny. As we look at Elimelech, his name meant strength of a king. That's what the word Elimelech meant. It dealt with what?
It dealt with also leadership. See, Elimelech was the leader of the home. He was the husband of Naomi. He was the father of 2 sons. And so he was the leader. He was the one, the breadwinner. He provided. He led them all the way to another country in Moab. He was the confidant. He was the one to look up to. He was a patriarch. He was the head, and he kept everything sound when things were going in disarray. He was able to encourage when things were down, when things was in distress. That was the leadership of Elimelech.
Hey, praise God for strong men. Amen. Praise God for heads of households. Amen. Praise God for them. And not only Elimelech, but his wife's name was Naomi. Somebody say Naomi. Now Naomi meant, the word means beautiful grace of God. And as you look at the life of Naomi, you will see that grace pervaded her life. Grace was all over Naomi's life, and she was seeing grace, and she walked in grace, and she received grace, and she extended grace. She was the picture of the grace of God.
And the two sons, we have Mahlon and Chilion. Mahlon meaning sickly, and Chilion meaning failing or destruction. And it's very interesting that, again, your words help define your destiny. And as we see later in the passage, that both of the sons died. So, and one again was named sickly and one was named failing. So what's really interesting is, what if they were predestined to die? What if this was all a part of God's plan? For them to go to Moab, get married to Ruth and Orpah, 10 years later to die. Their names meant sickly and failing. So what does that say about us?
Well, I don't know if our theology is equipped to even accept and understand that sometimes God does things that we just don't understand. How could a loving, righteous God create somebody to die? Oh, wait. I remember, I think he did that with his son as well. He was born to die. And so were these two children, as we think about, and it's just a strange stretch to even think of naming somebody sickly and failing. I'm so glad I named you Joshua. Because it means the Lord's salvation. The Lord saves, amen. Praise God, praise God. We named our second son Julian. It's a combination of Judah and lion. Judah and lion, amen. Praise God. He roars every now and then, amen. Praise God. Praise God. And we named our last son Jemiah, and it's a derivation. It comes from the word Jeremiah. Amen. A prophet. Amen. So we praise God, for names mean something. Your words define your destiny. And then there was Ruth. Everybody say Ruth. Now the word Ruth meant friendship. And if you look at the life of Ruth, amen, saying it to the band, if you look at the life of Ruth, you want to look at friendship. Tell my brother on the organ. Say friendship. Amen. Friendship exhibited in the life of Ruth. That's what Ruth's life just personified friendship. Ruth wasn't just a sometimey friend. Ruth wasn't a fair weather friend. Ruth wasn't a Facebook friend. But Ruth was a ride or die friend. And you're going to see Ruth, as we go throughout this text, you're going to see how Ruth valued friendship in such a way that it was a life and death matter. And then there was Orpah. Orpah meant neck or gazelle. That's what the word Orpah meant. And we understand that Orpah was the one, basically, after a few objections, she just went on her way. And a gazelle is something that gets easily spooked. Y'all know about a gazelle. You just make a crackling noise in the woods, and the gazelle is just off with the quickness. And there we have some Orpah friends, amen. Don't let a noise happen in the underbrush, and they off. They gone, and they're in the wind. That was Orpah.
And next we have the city, the town of Bethlehem. Bethlehem meaning house of bread. Again, your words define your destiny. And so we have here that the house of bread. It is also, when we look even further, this is also the same place where Jesus was born. And in this house of bread, there was a famine in that land. There was a famine in the house of bread. And what bread was barley. That's what they made. That's what they were helping with the harvest. But there was a famine in the land at the time. And so that's why, but it's still a promise of being a house of bread. So even with the promises that God gives us, that even when there is sometimes a famine that comes in and comes out, the promise still remains. There's a verse about how to trust in the Lord, and how we're like a tree planted by a stream. And during the heat and during the famine, it still remains green because its roots are connected to the stream. And so even in the famine, even in the heat, God will continue to keep you green in spite of it all.
Hallelujah. Amen. Let me sit down. Hallelujah. Praise God. Amen. Praise God. And then the last word that we have is Moab. Everybody say Moab. Now Moab, if you would look in your biblical maps, Moab is on the right side of the Dead Sea. And on the other side of the Dead Sea was the Promised Land. And so as the children of Israel were coming forth and coming out of Egypt, some of them stopped in Moab before going over into the Promised Land. In other words, they stopped just short of the Promised Land. And a whole lot of us are giving up before we go over into the Promised. We're stopping in Moab. We're stopping short of God's promise for our life. We're not allowing our God to move us to the place of destiny in our lives. And I'm here today saying, don't stop in Moab. That's my message to you. Don't stop in Moab. Go on over through the Dead Sea. Move on over into the Promised Land. Because God has something for you in Canaan. Hallelujah. Names, words define your destiny. And so be careful what you name your children. Amen. I was looking at some things and some folks naming their children after liquor brands. Yeah, don't do that. That might not be the best. Some folks naming their children after cars. Hey, Escalade, come on. No. Find out a name that means something and name them something, because you're calling that out of them every time you name them that. Every time you call them that. And when they were calling Ruth, they're calling Ruth, come on, friendship. Come here, friendship. All throughout her life. And so be careful what you name your children. Be careful what you name your own situations. Be careful. People saying, my headache. And my high blood. You calling it yours. You naming it. Oh, my tired bone. You naming it in yourself. Don't call deadness into your own life. Call life into your life. Be careful what you call yourself. If you forget something, don't be saying, I'm so crazy. Don't call yourself negativity. Call positivity out in your life. Call things that are not as though they were. Call life into your life. Speak life into your life.
Yeah. And it also says that life and death is in the power of the tongue.
Yeah.
Your tongue has creative power.
Yeah.
So when you speak something over yourself, when you speak something over other people, when you speak something over your situation, it has creative power. So even when the situation presents itself for you to fear, for you to worry, for you to get angry and whatnot, you have to choose to say, I'm going to speak life in this situation. I'm going to speak blessings over the situation. I will live and not die. He will supply all my needs according to riches and glory in Christ Jesus. I am the head and not the tail. I am above and not beneath. That is claiming life, even when you don't feel like it. Even when you don't feel like it. Even when you don't feel like it.
Somebody say, speak life. Somebody say, speak life. Hallelujah.
So, verse 6, we're going to be talking about loss is also followed by a blessing. When Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them, she and her other daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. With her two daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living and set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judah. Then Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me. So I want to again talk about how loss is also followed by blessing in Naomi's life when you look at it. So the first loss that we kind of see in this situation, we see how she left her home, but God blessed them with Moab. And then the loss of her husband, but then God blessed the two sons with Orpah and Ruth. And then we see that they died. But God also provided back the harvest back into Judah where they're able to go to. So what I just want to encourage you to continue to look to in the clues, even in your loss and even in your grief, what God is doing in your life.
Never miss a painful experience. Because in the middle of pain, there's a message that God wants to give us. And if we miss the message, we end up repeating the pain. It's just like those children of Israel who ran around and wandered around the desert for 40 years because they did not get the message. Get the message that God is trying to communicate to us in the midst of our pain. And then we got to find a cause worth fighting for. Somebody say, find a cause worth fighting for. Let's look at Ruth 1, starting with verse 14, and it reads, "At this they wept aloud again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her." Oh, it's important to cling. Find something that you can hold on to. Find something that you can grab a hold of. Find something that's worth investing your time and your energy and your effort and your focus in order to allow that thing to become all that it could be in your life.
Verse 15, "Look," said Naomi, "your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her." But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you." And we're looking at how what Ruth did was contradict what Naomi said. See, in the previous verses, Naomi put up this nice, fancy argument about so concerning about Ruth and Orpah's future, about the husbands that they should have and the life that they should have, and she was pushing away. Naomi was pushing away the Ruth and Orpah, and I believe that she went through so much loss and so much grief that she did not want to lose her two daughters-in-law. So she would rather suffer herself than bring along two young women with her. So she said, "No, go." Because she felt rejected by God. She felt all this pain and all this bitterness. So she spoke out of her heart of what she felt. Of what she felt. And then it goes in 16 and 17. This is what Ruth says. "Where you go, I will go. Yes. And where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people. Yes. And your God, my God. Yes. Where you die, I will die. Yes. And there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me." So you have to see that Ruth is proclaiming a covenant. Is proclaiming a covenant with Naomi. She, if you kind of see in this covenant, she sacrifices everything. Everything. She sacrifices her life, her social life, her future of maybe getting married again. She gave that up. She gave up her family, her gods, her culture, her food, her religion. She gave that all up. Where she was going to die, she gave that all up and proclaimed it. She spoke it. And not only, but she sealed it with a covenant, proclaiming with the Lord, Naomi's God. She's claiming it that it ever be so severely. She made a covenant with God. She was serious and she spoke it. And you can actually see what Naomi's response was to this bold covenant.
And that happens in verse 18. And when it says, when Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she just stopped urging her. I mean, something has to happen with your life that you are so bold about it that folk just stop trying to get you to do something else. You got to be so intent and so made up in your mind that you're going to do something that people will just stop trying to get you to do something different. And you gotta close the deal. Somebody say close the deal. You gotta close the deal, because as long as you got the deal open, people will try to distract you out of your purpose. As long as the doors are open, people will try to lead you into something different where God is not taking you. You gotta close the deal. Somebody say close the deal. Close the deal, because as long as it's open, there is a potential to get you out of where God wants you.
And again, like I mentioned earlier about God's clues for redemption. And so we see here that Ruth we see the clue of redemption here, because she first proclaims and she sacrifices. And in our process, we are going to undergo sacrifice. And so she was in the right heart position to give everything up. And what Naomi didn't know is that she was staring right at her redemption. She was staring at it. She didn't know, she almost pushed her redemption away. Naomi did. She told her redemption to leave. But she stayed. And it's interesting that God may put a promise, God may put a redemption right in front of your face, and you may not know it. You may not know it. Right in front of you, will speak to you, will talk to you, will continue to urge you. And look what Ruth does. She clings to her. She contradicts her pain in telling her to leave, and she makes a covenant, and she closes the deal. That's only but God.
Praise God, praise God. You know, as I think about blessings, a lot of times I think we think of blessings as something that we just sit around hoping and wondering, and maybe God will just pour me down a blessing. Here's my cup, Lord. Fill it up, Lord. We ain't doing nothing. That's not a real blessing. When you look at Ruth and her intensity, what she was doing was setting herself up for a blessing. Oh, we got a work to do as well. It's not all on God. I think we have started putting all of the responsibilities for blessings on God. And God saying, you have a part to play in getting blessed. So what I've discovered is the blessing is not just a word, it's a work. Oh, Lord, have mercy. I don't believe y'all heard. It's not just a word or a concept. Blessings are work. And so God has God's part in blessings, and then we have our part in blessings. And if we have not done our part in the blessing, guess what? Don't expect to get blessed. Oh, Lord have mercy. I believe somebody ought to be praying right now. God, what's my part in the blessing? God, what's my responsibility in getting blessed? Because God desires for us to do our part, so God will do God's part. Oh, somebody say work your blessing. Somebody say work your own blessing. Oh, praise God. I think about many years ago when we were just got married, and we were we had a financial planner come to the house, and the planner came over and said, you know, what would you, how many children would you like? And we said 2. You fill in the blank, all right. You fill in the blank. Sometimes God blesses you in ways. Praise God for you, Jemiah. Amen. He's looking at me in some sort of way up there, but we love you. Amen. Praise God. And so as we thought about that, he said, well, do you want him to go to college? And we said, sure. All right. And so said, well, according to the statistics of cost for colleges, and if you want to send these kids to college, you will need to start saving this amount until the time that they're around 18. I said, fine. And so my wife, being the spiritual woman that she is, and she said in the meeting, she said, well, they're going to get scholarships. They ain't born yet now, y'all. They ain't born yet. By faith. She said, they're going to get scholarships. I said, well, baby, I hope they do get scholarship. I believe in God for it. But, however, what we have to do is do our part in the blessing. And then God will do God's part for the rest. And just this past week, we were able to use that blessing for our wonderful son, Jemiah. Amen. Send it on in to Austin Peay State University. That's our part of the blessing. God will do God's part, but we got to do our part in the blessing. You can help God choose the blessings in your life. You can assist God. See, because it's the great commission. Co means together with. And so when we join our power and our faith and join with God's power, then it's the great commission. We got to choose our blessings, and then you got to choose your battles. Amen. You can't fight about everything. I found in marriage, that's one of the quick lessons I learned in marriage. You got to choose your battles. Because if you don't choose, you will be crazy if you don't choose your battles. You can't fight about everything. I remember when we first got married, we had what they call VCRs. New school folk looked that up, Google it. VCRs. That's what it was called. And he used to put these big old tapes and put it in there and push it down and they didn't play. It was a VCR. Check it out. And so being raised in the home of A.L. Jackson Sr., A.L. Jackson Sr. had some rules, and when we would go out of a room with the light still on in the room, he would say to us, "Get that light bill out of my pocket." So, I love my father. But he would make $1 holler. He would scream, the dollar would be screaming. Oh. On New Year, on Christmas, on Christmas Eve, he would go out and get it to those abandoned lots where the people done left the Christmas trees. He would get one of them. How you ain't have to pay for it. He would make, he would squeeze the life out of $1. That's why we have what we have today. But anyway, the VCR light was on, so I would tell my wife, I said, after you finish watching the VCR, just go ahead and turn it off. She's like, okay. So the next day, the VCR light would be on. And I would be like, baby, you remember what was that yesterday? Like if you finish watching VCR, make sure you turn it. Oh, sure, no problem. Just all sweet and everything. Then about the third or fourth day, and I see it on, I'll be like, now she's messing with me now. And so I went into this long, extended explanation about the need to conserve energy and to not waste things at the end of the day. Guess what? I finally came to the point of solving the problem, y'all. You know how I did it? Turn it off myself. You can't fight about everything. Somebody say, choose your battles. You gotta choose your battles and don't give energy to ignorance. Somebody ought to write that down. That's not original. That's from my best friend in Kansas City, Willie Thornton. That's what he told me. He says it all the time. He says, don't give energy to ignorance. Don't allow your energy. Did you know your energy is limited? The older I get, the older I realize your energy is limited. You can't give your energy to everything. So you got to choose the things that you will allow your energy to be devoted to. And don't give it to ignorance, because it will use you up. Find a cause worth fighting for. Pursue a purpose worth pursuing. Find a hope worth holding on to. And God will bless your life.
In Ruth 1:19 it says, "So the two women went on until they came to Bethlehem. They arrived in Bethlehem. The whole town was stirred because of them. And the women exclaimed, 'Can this be Naomi? What happened to your husband? What happened to your sons? You were pretty well off. Who is this? Moabite woman? Who is that? What's going on?'" And it's interesting that your change in season may shock people from your past, so that the season in the transition, the process, the sacrifice, the pain that you're going to, people on the outside looking in are confused. Well, what's going on? I thought you were this. I thought this happened. What happened? And the thing about it is that it is our response to what's going on. Not everybody's going to know what you go through. Not everybody's going to understand what God is doing in your life. So you cannot totally expect and lean upon them to give you the hope, to give you the grace, to give you the encouragement, but relying on God. But we are going to learn about what Naomi's response was to the women.
Let's look in verse 20 as we continue on. It says, "Don't call me Naomi," she told them. "Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter." How in the world can Naomi get to the point and place of having been called beautiful? That's her real name. And this is it, just call me bitter. Naomi had gone through so much stuff in her life. She lost her husband. She lost her sons. She lost her welfare. She lost her country. And she had gone through so much mental abuse that she said, just don't call me beautiful, just call me bitter. Have you ever been in that place and sometimes you feel like you just want to give up, throw up both your hands and throw in the towel? But that's exactly where she was. She was at that point and at that place in her life that she was even changing her name and speaking negatively about her own self. She was at that place. What do you do when this happens in your life? What do you do when your blessings have expiration dates? Our sons, somehow they picked up the habit of going into the refrigerator, and when they bring out the package, they looking at the expiration. I'm a bad boy, you better eat that thing. Pay too much money. Back in the day, we didn't have no expiration dates. Look. What don't kill you, make it better. Amen. Praise God. But an expiration date, it tells when the thing becomes defunct. It tells when the thing is no longer of use. And I think we have kind of bought into the new age psychology that once I'm blessed for a lifetime. We would love to think that, but the truth of the matter is that some of God's blessings have expiration dates. We don't want to see that. My father was a blessing for 103 years. But today was his expiration date. And as much as we would like to hold him here, as much as we would like to keep him here, God knows better than we know. And I want to tell you why, because he's the manufacturer. And the manufacturer knows more than the end user. Come on now, I feel my help coming here. I believe we ought to look to the manufacturer to get our marching orders, to know where we ought to go and where God desires for us to be. Look to God, the author and the finisher of your faith. Understand that some of God's blessings are seasonal. Seasonal blessings. Some of them are seasonal, and you go to some clothing department stores, and they got seasonal wear. There's seasonal flowers that spring up only on one particular season. And some of God's blessings are seasonal. And see, God is a seasonal God. And if we're not in tune with God's season, we'll get mad at God. God is saying, don't get mad at me. Check your season. Understand your season. Don't get caught holding on to last season's blessings. They're already expired.
I think it's important to remember that God is the source, and He provides resources. So we can't continue to depend on the resources as the 100% the whole provision. But we have to remind ourselves that we have to depend on the source. Because the source provides resources.
So money is a source, but what?
But God is the resource.
Come on now. Education is a source, but
God is the resource.
Relationships are the source, but
God is the resource.
Oh, come on now. Don't get caught holding on to last season's blessings. Holding on to last season's blessings can place a block on next season's blessings. Y'all didn't get me. Holding on to last season's blessings can put a block on next season's blessings. Just because you have a past with someone or something, it doesn't necessarily mean you have a future with them. Oh, Jesus, y'all don't want to hear it? Don't want to hear it? Don't let your circumstances contradict your convictions. Don't let your opinions of people block your blessings. Don't let your depression or self-doubt make you miss your season. Not even our doubt can deter God's blessings when they're on the way.
Yeah, and so in verse 21, it says, Naomi says, I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me. And what's really interesting is that it's a very true statement that she went away full, but the Lord has brought her back empty. And so sometimes we may come into a season and we may have enough money and everything may be good in the family and everything like that. But maybe during the situation, things happen where the resources, the blessings are being stripped away from you, which empties you, which drains you. And so what Naomi, talking about this situation, she looks at this whole situation, and she views it as a negative. She's saying that God, not only has He rejected me, not only has He afflicted me, but He has brought misfortune upon me. She's saying that the Lord Almighty is against her. That everything that's going on, that she feels, this is how she feels. She feels that God is not with her anymore. That there's something, I don't know why, but God just doesn't like me anymore. He just is cursing me now. What's going on? But here's the beauty of it. Is that in this whole situation, we have to remember that God is still there.
Yes, He is.
That God is in control when life is out of control. And so when we look into this whole situation, God is there every single step of the way. But Naomi couldn't see it. Because she was blinded by her bitterness and by her pain. And she looked at this emptiness as a curse. But really the emptiness was a blessing. We sometimes think that blessings are only things that make us feel good. But what if blessings are also pain? What if blessings are also pain? Everything that God does is good. He's a God of love. He is love. That's what it says in His Word. So if He drains you, if He takes you, that means He's still good. It says God giveth and God taketh away. Sometimes we are so focused about God giving us things. Sometimes we are so focused about being blessed for our own prosperity. But God gives our mindset about it. When we think about Naomi coming in full, she had a husband. She was probably well off. She had 2 strong, strapping sons. And she was able to move in the famine from Bethlehem to Moab. But here's the thing. Back in that day, not everyone could just come up and move like that. People were still in the famine in Bethlehem. Not everybody just left. But she had the wealth enough to continue to do so. That's why the women were so shocked. That's why they were so shocked. Could this be Naomi? What? I remember her having all this and all that and all this, and then she left and now she's just coming in full? What's going on? She was probably well respected. She was probably even envied at the time. But she was emptied from her support system. She was emptied of what she relied on, of what she leaned on, leaning on the blessings a little too much, and forgetting who is the source of every resource, of every blessing, of every provision, of every deliverance, of every healing. Who is the source?
Is your theology mature enough to believe that God sometimes empties us on purpose? I know that you've been filled. I know that God has poured into your life. I know that God has filled you. I know that you have experienced a personal relationship with the water of life. And that water has come into your life and made you something that you were not before, and filled you. And we praise God for being filled with the water of life. But the truth of the matter is that sometimes in the midst of being filled with the water of life, sometimes we are wounded. Sometimes we are wounded and the water of life begins to leak out, and not only is one wound, sometimes we have multiple wounds and we don't know what to do, and then we were asking God, where are you in the midst of my wounds? God, can't you see I'm leaking, God? Can't you see I'm in pain, God? Can't you see that my life is just losing out and my feelings are on the floor? Thanks be to God that there is help for the wounded. And what we need is to just get covered. And when we're covered, God stops the wounds. Not only does he stop the wound, guess what he does? He fills us